It was a rainy afternoon in downtown Chicago when Jake stepped into the bustling café, shaking off the cold water from his coat. He'd just gotten off the phone with Sarah, his longtime friend and the woman he'd always hoped would be more than a friend. They hadn't talked much lately, but that call had changed everything. Sarah had always been the one chasing her dreams. Focused, smart, and fiercely independent, she was a rising star at a major tech company. But Jake, well, he was still searching. He'd tried different jobs, various paths, but nothing stuck. Today she told him that after years of hard work she had a shot at a big promotion, a chance to lead a new project that could change her life, and then she said it. "You're just not on the same level anymore, Jake." Those words hit him like a punch to the gut. Late. He always felt like he was running behind, but he didn't need her to point that out. The disappointment in her voice cut deeper than he expected. Sitting in the cafe, he watched raindrops race down the window. With every drop that fell, he felt more determined. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had been too safe, too comfortable in his steps. That night he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart racing. What if he didn't let her down? What if he turned things around? Over the next few weeks, Jake dove into a whirlwind of research. He studied business models, read books, and even enrolled in online courses. Late nights turned into early mornings, fueled by coffee and a burning desire to prove himself. He focused on a tech startup he'd always dreamed of having. The idea blossomed in his mind every day, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was his moment. While he worked, Sarah climbed the corporate ladder, getting closer to her promotion. The news in her world buzzed with the successes she was achieving, and he couldn't help but feel both pride and envy. Each time they met, he could see the glow of her ambition, the sparkle in her eyes that told him she was ready to take on the world. Every laugh they shared and every moment spent together only fueled his motivation. Months rolled on, and finally, Jake had a prototype developed. He didn't have a large team or investors, just his skills, grit, and growing vision. With his heart pounding, he decided to reach out to tech investors. After countless rejections, he finally found a few who believed in his idea. They saw the potential, and suddenly he had a chance to make it all real. Sarah exclaimed one evening when they met for dinner. After seeing her, he couldn't help but smile. Jake nodded, feeling an unfamiliar swell of pride. "Thanks, Sarah," she gave him a teasing smile. But her words didn't feel exactly like a joke. She seemed surprised, maybe impressed. Jake took a deep breath, feeling a mix of joy and fear. Her eyes widened. Really? The conversation lingered, both excited yet waited. Sarah had always been the ambitious one, and seeing him finally step up ignited a spark between them that was hard to ignore. As the months sped by, the path Jake was carving became more rocky, filled with unexpected challenges. Investors demanded more than he had anticipated. He needed to show proof of growth, but with limited resources, it felt like running a marathon uphill. Desperate to push through, he worked even harder, until one day, with exhaustion weighing him down, he received a call that changed everything. The startup he had been chasing, the one he put his heart and soul into, had caught the eye of a bigger company, a giant in the tech industry. They wanted to acquire him. Jake's heart raced. This was everything. But then he remembered all the work, the nights he spent away from his friends. What would Sarah say? Would she call him lucky or dismiss his success? When he told her the news, she paused, her eyes searching his face. "That's incredible, Jake, you're really doing it." "I know which one I'd choose," she said, a hint of admiration in her voice. But later, when he followed up, it was clear they were at different points. Her uncertainty peeked through. That question lingered. What if it did? He looked at his messy apartment, remembered the late nights and all the sacrifices. "I want to prove I can do this." With determination in his heart, Jake chose to move forward. He negotiated with the big tech company, ensuring he could stay involved, steering the vision he believed in. The acquisition was finalized, and Jake stood on the rooftop of the company's headquarters, overlooking the skyline of Chicago. He made it. A cool breeze flowed through, carrying a sense of triumph, but as he walked back into his new office, something gnawed at him. Sarah had been his inspiration, but now there was a gap, the thrill of his achievement overshadowed by a lingering question. Was it enough to win her over? Weeks turned to months, and though he thrived in the fast-paced environment, he missed their late-night talks and the chemistry that had deepened each time they met. He wanted to show her everything, the new office, the team he had pulled together. He wanted her to see him as more than just a friend who was catching up to her level. He finally called her up, heart racing. "Hey, want to join me for a coffee?" "Sure, I'd love to," she replied, her voice warm yet curious. When they met, he could see a cloud of questions behind her bright smile. Jake took a deep breath, leaning forward. "I bought the company I've been working on. I'm leading it. Her eyes sparkled with surprise and pride. "Wow, that's amazing, Jake." But then he hesitated, wanting to push further, to open up deeper about everything they had lost in the whirlwind of ambition. "Sarah, it's just one part of the dream. I want to build this with you in mind." Her smile slipped, replaced by a furrowed brow. "Jake, I'm so happy for you. I'm not sure I can be a part of this." Her words felt like a blow. The warmth he felt a moment ago turned cold. "No, it's not that at all. Jake felt his heart sink. His dreams, so vibrant just moments ago, seemed to dim. "I thought maybe we could be more than friends," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah looked away, pain etched on her face. "You deserve someone who can be all in, Jake." With every word, Jake felt her walls rise higher, but as he sorted his emotions, something else pulled at him. They were both ambitious, but that didn't mean they couldn't cross paths again someday. Still, as they parted, he knew one thing: he was determined to keep showing up in her life. So he dove deeper into building his company, aiming for something even greater. Months rolled on, and while Jake thrived, Sarah continued to climb her own corporate ladder. Through each milestone, he'd catch glimpses of her successes online. She was doing brilliantly, and deep down he felt proud. But then came the news that shook the entire tech world. The giant company Sarah worked for had faced an unexpected crisis. Headlines flashed across the screen, and Jake's heart sank. He rushed to listen to the details. They were letting go of key figures, and there was no telling who might be next. It was within that chaos that Jake realized something profound. Success meant little if he couldn't share it. He thought of all their late nights discussing their dreams and aspirations, how they had once envisioned the futures they longed for together. Jake reached out, setting aside his pride. "Hey, I saw the news." His message felt heavy in the air. After a moment, her reply arrived. "I'm grappling with it." He paused, wanting to reach through the screen. "Want to grab dinner?" When they met, the tension between them felt different, charged and familiar. She opened up about the struggles, the uncertainty that hovered over her dream. Jake listened, quietly hoping to mend the distance that had formed between them. "I always admired your determination, Sarah," he said, sincerity weaving through his words. Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked up, surprised. "Absolutely." In that moment, the boundaries they'd drawn began to blur. They talked late into the night about fears and dreams, the pathways they paved leading back toward one another. Eventually, she smiled. "Maybe we can collaborate. Yes, let's build something together." As the spark rekindled, it became clear to both of them that this was just the beginning. A few months later, over coffee in a corner cafe, they brainstormed ideas for a new project. They shared laughter, excitement bubbling up as the ambience around them seemed to fade. The connection they had always felt grew deeper, a blend of friendship and newfound partnership. By weaving their strengths into one shared vision, they found their rhythm again. The company flourished, but more importantly, so did their relationship. They learned that it was never too late to chase dreams, to support one another, and to realize that success is sweeter when shared. As they worked to create something lasting, Jake recognized that being late wasn't a failure. It had only been a part of their unique journey, a journey that intertwined two ambitious hearts, finally moving forward together. Jake stood in the shadow of the towering skyscrapers, heart racing as he listened to Sarah's voice crackle over the phone. "You're too late, Jake." Each word felt like a dagger, plunging deep into his chest. The city hummed around him, a vibrant reminder of everything he felt he was losing. They had been close for years, friends who shared dreams under the flickering stars, but now it felt like they were worlds apart. He could hear her ambition shining through her voice and unwavering confidence that fueled her success. Sarah was on the brink of a major promotion at a prestigious tech company. Meanwhile, Jake was still floundering, trying to find his place in the chaotic whirlwind of professional life. He started, but the line went dead before he could finish. Standing there, the world around him blurred into a backdrop of gray. He saw the reflections of the city on the massive glass windows surrounding him, but all he could feel was his own disappointment. Without another thought, he shoved the phone back into his pocket and began walking. He was tired of feeling like he was running behind. That night he lay awake in his small apartment, the weight of uncertainty pressing on his chest. He recalled their talks, their late-night dreams of launching a startup, of creating something that mattered. He couldn't let it go. He couldn't let her go. With a surge of determination, Jake decided to change his life, starting right there and then. He dug out his old notebook and began to sketch out ideas. Night after night, he poured himself into this project. He read books, took online courses, and embraced every scrap of information he could find about starting a business. Days turned into weeks as Jake transformed his tiny living room into a makeshift office. Empty coffee cups piled up like trophies, each one symbolizing a late night spent wrestling with ideas. He created the framework for a tech company that would change lives, much like Sarah's company was about to do. And just like that, the spark began to grow. He spent hours online, perfecting his pitch and looking for potential investors. The rejections rolled in as expected, but after a string of persistent attempts, he finally secured a few meetings with small-time investors who saw what he envisioned. Sarah's voice jolted him back to reality one afternoon as he was poring over his latest prototype. He looked up to find her standing at the door of his tiny office, a mixture of surprise and curiosity coloring her features. He tried to sound casual, but the tension in the room thickened with every moment. She asked, glancing around, eyebrows raised. He gestured vaguely to the scattered papers and his laptop. "I'm working on a project." Her expression shifted from surprise to skepticism. "Really? Yeah, really," Jake said, feeling a spark of defiance. "I'm serious about this." She crossed her arms, a shadow of doubt crossing her face. "That's great, but when it comes down to it, it's a huge risk." His heart sank. She still saw him as the underdog, the dreamer without a backbone. He gritted his teeth. "I'm not just a dreamer anymore, Sarah. Days were busy, sleepless nights turned into weeks, and victories tasted sweeter than ever. Meetings turned into serious conversations, and meetings led to initial funding. The startup gained traction rapidly. All the while, he couldn't shake Sarah's voice from his mind. He wanted her to see him as different. He wanted her to see him as a partner, not just a friend. Then one fateful morning, he received the call that could change everything. "The company is interested in acquiring your startup," the voice on the other end of the line said, the excitement popping from the words. Jake's heart raced. What? Absolutely, they see the potential. Just like that, everything he had worked for was on the cusp of becoming real. But the moment was bittersweet. He thought of Sarah again. A company acquisition could mean more than just money. It could mean respect, confidence, and perhaps her affection. As if the universe had conspired to bring them together again, Jake called Sarah that night, adrenaline still pulsing through him. "Jake." She answered, a hint of wariness in her tone. "I need you to meet me. It's important," he said, his voice steady. When they met in a small, bustling café, Jake felt the tension between them once again, a blend of excitement and uncertainty. After small talk and catching up, he took a deep breath, ready to dive in. "Sarah, I got an offer," he said, leaning forward. Her eyes widened, a flicker of surprise shining through. "Wow, that's incredible. I'd stay in the driver's seat. I want to keep building what I started, but with their resources." But then he saw it, the flicker of doubt in her eyes as she studied him. "You realize this means a lot of responsibility." He felt a pang in his chest. "I know, but I've put everything into this. It's not just a job anymore, Sarah." As they talked, her skepticism transformed into admiration. They dove deeper into the conversation, discussing plans, dreams, and visions. He felt a shift in her demeanor, a softening as they spoke of the future. But then came the moment that made Jake's heart drop. I'm proud of you, Jake, but I think you're too late for something else," she said, her voice softer, a hint of sadness lacing her words. He asked, heart racing. "By the time you've built all of this, I'll be moving forward in my career too. I can't keep waiting for you." The world felt like it spun off its axis. "You don't mean that," he whispered, searching her eyes for reassurance. "I do." Jake felt like the ground was crumbling beneath his feet, but before he could voice another thought, her phone buzzed. "I have to take this," she said, stepping aside. Left in the chaos of a bustling cafe, he steadied himself. He didn't want this to be the end, and sometimes it takes the harshest moments to fuel the fire deep within. Days turned into weeks, and the acquisition went through. The business expanded, and Jake took charge, leading a talented team that believed in his vision. Sarah's name floated around in whispers as she climbed up the ladder, achieving her own success. He couldn't shake the feeling of wanting to share it all with her. Every victory became bittersweet without her by his side. He was busy building something that felt right, but the connection with her lingered like a ghost in his mind. Then came the news. A sudden crisis hit Sarah's company. It happened so fast the announcement echoed through the city as if the world was holding its breath. Employees laid off, chaos reigning in hallways that once buzzed with excitement. Jake felt an unfamiliar urgency tugging at him. This was her moment of uncertainty, and he refused to stand by while someone he cared for stumbled through a storm. He rushed to reach out. "Hey Sarah, I heard about what happened." "Yeah, I don't know what to think," she replied, her voice shaky. "Want to talk over dinner?" When they met, the air crackled with emotion. They spoke about her fears, his victories, and the road that had led them both here. Somehow, amidst the haze of uncertainty, clarity bloomed. "Jake, I thought I could handle everything on my own," she admitted, eyes downcast. He reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. "You don't have to. You have people around you who want to support you." The tension melted in that moment, shadows of doubt dimming. Maybe they could forge a new path, one that didn't ignore the respect and admiration they had for each other. A few months passed, filled with collaboration and creativity. The crisis in her company was a catalyst for an even more significant opportunity. Together, they landscaped the tech industry by merging ideas, passions, and dreams. As they worked late into the night on their latest project, Jake looked over at Sarah, her laptop casting a soft glow on her face. "You know we can make this work," he said, feeling a warmth spread through him. Sarah smiled, a light illuminating her eyes. In that moment, it struck him that sometimes timing isn't everything. They weren't just employees or business partners. They were two people who had carved their paths until they intertwined again, stronger than before. From that day forward, their relationship changed. No longer were they bound by doubts or fears. They became a force, walking side by side into a future neither had been brave enough to envision alone. Jake was no longer too late. He had finally caught up, and they were ready to conquer the world together. The past was a chapter in their story, but the future shimmered with promise, a testament to their journey and newfound partnership. It was a bustling Tuesday morning in the heart of Silicon Valley, a place where dreams met reality at every corner. The air buzzed with ambition, and coffee shops overflowed with people plotting their futures. Jake stood outside a sleek glass office building, feeling small among the giants. He cradled his phone in his hand, staring at the last message he received from Sarah. "You're late to the game, Jake," her words echoed in his mind, piercing through the excitement of another day in his life. Just a few days ago, she had been glowing about her promotion at one of the top tech firms while he was still chasing a flickering dream of starting his own business. They had shared everything: dreams, late-night brainstorming sessions, a bond that felt unbreakable. But now it felt fractured, like a glass vase teetering on the edge of a table. As he entered the building, the cool, air-conditioned breeze brushed against him, invigorating yet intimidating. Jake had worked hard to get to this point, applying for funding and developing a prototype. He was so close to launching his own tech startup, but every time he thought of Sarah, doubt crept in. He picked up his phone, staring at her smiling face in the contact image. He muttered under his breath, maybe he needed to show her he was more than the guy she used to know, a dreamer without a plan. Days turned into weeks, and every morning Jake found himself more focused. He immersed himself in work, throwing himself into late nights filled with coding and pitching ideas. He noticed the world fade around him. Friends reached out, but he was too busy to notice. Instead, his heart fueled his determination. If he could make his startup work, then maybe he could win Sarah back. Maybe then she'd see he was more than just a late arrival to the world they once dreamed about conquering together. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across his cluttered workspace, Jake received an unexpected email. It was an offer from a well-known tech giant interested in acquiring startups like his. His heart raced with excitement. This could be it, the big break he had been waiting for. Jake pored over every detail, his mind racing at the possibilities, but then anxiety crept in. He wondered, despite their recent distance, she had always been a source of inspiration, a guiding light in the sea of uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, he decided to call her. "Hey, Jake." Her voice was warm but tinged with a hint of hesitance. "I got an offer," he announced, trying to keep his tone steady. "What?" she exclaimed, but he could hear the catch in her voice. "Yeah," he continued, sensing her hesitation. "But I want you to be involved. I want to keep building it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "I'm happy for you, but I have my own career to think about, Jake." "Sarah, I'm not asking you to step back from your life. I'm asking you to join me. We could make magic happen together," he urged, his heart pounding. "I need to focus on my own goals for now," she replied, her voice softening but firm. His heart sank. "No, it's not that at all," she said, frustration creeping in. And with that, the line went silent again. Jake stood alone in his dim apartment, the dark evening swallowing his hopes. He realized time was passing, and he was desperate to catch up to her world. Fueled by desperation and determination, Jake threw himself even deeper into work. He spent endless hours perfecting his pitch deck and preparing for meetings with investors. The night after Sarah's call, he drew sketches of what his tech company could become, the vision blossoming in his mind. As the weeks rolled by, he managed to secure several investors willing to back him. Each success pushed him closer to realizing his dream. He pictured the day when he could stand beside Sarah, not as a sidekick, but as an equal, possibly the one who could show her what persistence could yield. Then one afternoon, as he sat in a small café, laptop open and papers strewn about, he felt a rush of adrenaline. The acquisition was finalized. Eyes wide with disbelief, he read the email that confirmed it. The company wanted to bring him on board, not just as an employee, but as a leader to drive their new venture. His thoughts raced as a whirlwind of emotions coursed through him. This was the moment he had dreamed about, but a part of him kept thinking about Sarah. He needed to tell her, needed her to understand how important this opportunity was. The moment he stepped outside the cafe, he dialed her number. She interrupted, her voice bright and cheerful. "I'm glad you called," he asked, feeling a pang of jealousy tighten his stomach. "I got promoted to senior project manager. The team has been pushing for it, and I finally received the offer this morning," she said, her excitement palpable even through the phone. "That's amazing, Sarah, you deserve it," he said, forcing a smile even though a dark cloud of disappointment gathered in his chest. "Thanks," her tone shifted slightly. "What's going on with you?" "It's nothing, just busy," he replied, trying to hide his frustration. "It's okay to talk to me, you know," she said gently. He hesitated. Should he share the excitement of his recent triumph? Would it push her further away? I got the acquisition, my startup." There was a pause on the line. "Wait, you did? Wow, that's incredible, but I hope you're ready for it." Her words struck him like thunder. "I thought you'd be proud." "Jake, it's not about that. It's about being ready to take on the weight of a whole company. It can consume you." He clenched his jaw, feeling her words clawing at his insecurities. "I won't forget who I am. I've worked hard for this." As they exchanged pleasantries, the air between them grew heavy with unspoken tension. A feeling of loss washed over Jake. It wasn't just business anymore, it was personal. Weeks passed and Jake became entrenched in his new role, his world suddenly spinning faster than he had anticipated. Meetings turned into long hours, and the thrill of acquisition faded into the reality of expectations. And every time Jake faced challenges, he felt Sarah's absence more intensely. The late-night brainstorming sessions they used to share transformed into solitary nights filled with pressure and uncertainty. He clicked, heart pounding. A familiar name flashed across the headline, Sarah. His mind raced. Had she been let go? He texted her immediately, concern bubbling to the surface. "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine, she replied, but the brevity of her message felt hollow, a facade hiding the storm beneath. He typed back, a sense of urgency bubbling through him. Not now, Jake. The reply stung, but he refused to back down. They had been through too much not to support each other. Days turned into weeks, and Jake kept trying to reach out, sending messages, hoping to hear her voice again. Each message felt like a thread reaching out, searching for connection, but her responses grew shorter and colder. Finally, in a moment of vulnerability, he messaged her, "I'm here if you need me, I mean it." And then unexpectedly, he found himself standing outside her office after a long day. The shadows danced across the pavement, the city lights flickering into life. Hesitant yet determined, he walked in. Jake found her in a conference room, papers strewn about, the exhaustion in her eyes cut deeply. He felt his resolve harden. Her expression melted into surprise. "I know. It's chaotic for both of us," he said gently, "but I want to help. I appreciate that, but I don't want to drag you down," she replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sarah, you could never drag me down. We're in this together," he said, feeling the tension shift in the air. "What's going on? Are you okay?" She paused, the walls she had been building around herself beginning to crack. "It's been tough. I didn't get the promotion." Jake felt a wave of empathy wash over him. "I know our journeys have been different, but they're still connected. Maybe we could work together again." She looked up, a newfound spark igniting in her eyes. "Let's combine our strengths, your project management experience and my tech insight." Her smile returned, tentative but hopeful. "I've missed working with you," she admitted. With a gust of renewed hope, they spent hours mapping out ideas and visions, weaving their dreams into a shared tapestry. Each moment brought them closer, not just as colleagues, but as partners ready to embark on a new journey together. In the corner of the conference room, surrounded by ideas and excitement, they felt the weight of the past begin to lift. What had once been a cycle of disappointment began to transform into a promise of new beginnings. As they walked out onto the terrace, overlooking the shimmering city lights, Jake turned to her. "Maybe I was wrong about you, Jake," she replied, smiling brighter than he'd seen in months. And there, bathed in the glow of the skyline, Jake knew this time he had finally caught up. Not just to her, but to a future they would build together, a bond stronger than the challenges they faced, a partnership destined to rewrite their stories, hand in hand. The ink on the contract had barely dried when Jake received the message that changed everything. Sarah's words flashed across the screen, piercing through his elation like a hot knife slicing through butter. Just days after celebrating his startup's acquisition by a major tech firm, here was Sarah, the woman who had once shared dreams with him, now placing distance between their worlds. He stood in the sleek office overlooking the city, the skyline illuminated by the setting sun, a backdrop that perfectly contrasted the turmoil swirling within him. In that moment, he understood the churning weight of her words. He was late. Late to the game of ambition, late to measure up to her expectations, and late to realize that their paths had diverged. Despite their shared history, he felt like a stranger in her eyes. They had spent countless nights talking about what their futures could be, effortlessly weaving together their dreams over coffee in dimly lit cafes. But those memories felt like shadows now, slipping away as she climbed higher in her career, and he just barely grasped the rung of success. "Focus on your own success, Jake," he whispered to himself, a mantra he clung to desperately. He picked up the phone again, the light illuminating his face and syncing with his racing heart. What would it take to show her that he was more than just a late bloomer? As days turned into weeks, Jake threw himself into work. He pored over numbers, strategized marketing approaches, and dove deep into tech innovations, determined to make his newly acquired company thrive. But amid the excitement of newfound success, thoughts of Sarah lingered like smoke. He imagined her in corporate meetings, bathed in power, her confidence radiating like sunlight. But lately, that light seemed inaccessible. Each time he saw a post from her about another achievement, another milestone, he felt a mix of pride and envy swell within him. They had once been each other's greatest supporters, but now every message felt like a silent reminder of the gap that had widened between them. He knew he had to do more than just succeed, he had to prove himself. In meetings, his voice grew stronger, his ideas sharper. Investors began to notice. His leadership style, once uncertain, transformed into something bold and commanding. He recalled the nights they spent dreaming big and leaned into that vision. He started to attract not only attention, but results. For every step forward he took with the company, he felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could reconnect with Sarah. One evening, after wrapping up a long day, he found himself scrolling through social media when he spotted her latest post. The accompanying picture showed her confidently standing in front of a boardroom, ready to take on another challenge, yet that familiar pang of longing washed over him. They hadn't spoken in weeks, and each interaction seemed more distant. Unable to hold back, he decided it was time. He dialed her number, his stomach twisting with anticipation. "I miss our talks, Sarah," he said once she answered. "Jake, it's been busy," she replied, an edge of uncertainty threading through her voice. "I know," he pressed, keeping his voice steady, "but let's catch up. I want to hear what you've been working on." There was silence on the other end, and for a fleeting moment he feared she might reject the idea altogether. "All right, fine, I'll make time," she finally said, and he could feel the balance shift slightly back in his favor. When they met at a quiet cafe, the atmosphere felt electric. He could see her nervous energy swirling around, just as he felt jitters coursing through his own veins. The cafe was filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. They sat across from one another, the warm light casting soft shadows on their faces. She asked, stirring her coffee, her expression guarded yet curious. "It's challenging," he said, leaning forward, trying to bridge the gap. "But I feel like I'm finally carving my own space." That glimmer in her eyes didn't go unnoticed. She asked, genuine curiosity breaking through her defenses. "I want to expand," he replied, his excitement bubbling to the surface. "But I could use a partner." He watched her consider his words, contemplating the possibility. But then her defenses came crashing back down. "Jake, I'm flattered, but I'm focused on my own role right now." Pausing, "That's not what I meant," he replied, feeling frustration rise. "What if we combine our strengths?" She looked away, her brow furrowed. "I appreciate the thought, I do, but I don't want to be tied down to anything." Jake fought back the disappointment. "I thought we were on the same team," he said, trying to mask the hurt. Sarah took a deep breath, and he could see the weight of his words land heavily on her shoulders. "We did, Jake, but that was before." Her words hung in the air like a thick fog. He leaned back, feeling the familiar tug of regret and loss. "You know I'm not just a dreamer anymore, right?" The silence stretched between them, and she finally replied, "I know that, but success isn't just about winning contracts or making deals. It's about fulfillment." Jake nodded, feeling the sting. Maybe she was right. He had chased success, and in doing so, he had neglected the emotional connection they once thrived on. The conversation shifted, and though they laughed and reminisced about old times, the underlying tension remained. They parted ways that day, and Jake felt a sense of emptiness return, like a shadow stealing away the light. As the weeks passed, Jake focused relentlessly on his business. Each decision felt like it carried more weight than the last, but with the pressure came clarity. He was determined to make his mark not just for himself, but for concepts he and Sarah had once explored together. Then came the news that rattled the office. Sarah's company was facing an unexpected crisis. They had lost a major client, and layoffs were imminent. His heart raced when he heard it. A part of him wanted to reach out to offer support, but another part hesitated. Was this the moment when he stepped back into her life, or would it feel like opportunism? Seeing her in such turmoil ignited something deep within him. Late one evening, he drafted a message. "Hey, Sarah. I heard about the situation. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here." She replied almost instantly, her words laden with strain. "Thanks, Jake, I appreciate that." With an impulse he couldn't resist, he followed up. "Let's meet. We can strategize or just catch up." And just like that, they found themselves in a small, dimly lit bar, a contrast to the corporate world that had kept them apart. The warmth of the venue enveloped them, and as they sat across from each other, they were reminded of the chemistry that once sparked effortlessly between them. "It's good to see you," she said softly, the vulnerability in her voice mixing with the heaviness in the room. "Likewise," he replied, "I miss this. I didn't know where we stood for a while," she confessed, finally dropping the walls she had put up. "I think we always had the potential to create something incredible together," he said, leaning into the moment. Their conversation flowed naturally, weaving between personal stories and professional aspirations. Sarah voiced her fears about her job, while Jake shared how he navigated the tumultuous waters of his own acquisition. He could see the flicker of their old connection rekindling. He suggested, feeling hope surge within him. She paused, eyes searching his. "I don't know, Jake. Where would that leave us if things don't work out?" He felt the tightening in his chest. "But that's a risk we have to take, right?" Sarah looked deep into his eyes, and for a brief moment the world around them faded away. It felt like they were standing on the precipice of something beautiful. As they discussed ideas for collaboration, laughter bubbled forth, and he could sense the dynamic between them shifting again. Conversations poured out as they reignited their shared vision. Days turned to weeks, and they worked tirelessly on what they decided to call Synergy Innovations, a company that combined their strengths. Jake marveled at Sarah's ingenuity when she navigated challenges with ease, and he increasingly felt the walls they both built begin to crumble. In the blink of an eye, their journey transformed into something wondrous. As their company grew, so too did their bond, each day marked by shared goals, laughter, and late-night brainstorming sessions reminiscent of their early days. Yet as they thrived, Jake remained acutely aware of the delicate balance they walked. One evening, while they were collaborating on a new pitch, he hesitated before speaking. Sarah turned to him, uncertainty clouding her eyes. "I think it's refreshing. Then let's build new memories," he said softly. Their eyes met, and he sensed a tentative understanding blossoming between them. Maybe they could do this together. Months later, standing at the launch event for Synergy Innovations, Jake felt a surge of pride. People crowded around, eyes shining with anticipation for what they'd unveiled. The company had surpassed every expectation, but more importantly, their connection had deepened into something beautiful and resilient. As he stepped up to speak, he scanned the crowd. There she was, standing near the front, her face beaming with pride. "To our success," he declared, raising a glass. Cheers erupted, voices blending into a chorus of celebration that filled the room. Later that night, as the festivities waned and the crowd began to break up, Jake found Sarah alone on the balcony, the stars twinkling above. He joined her, the cool night air wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. "You did it," she said, her voice full of warmth. "We did it," he corrected gently. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the glow of the city below. "Honestly, I didn't believe I could come back from the chaos, but here we are." "And sometimes it takes being late to the game to find where you belong," he added, the sentiment echoing their shared journey. With newfound hope threading through them, Jake took a small step forward. Sarah smiled, that familiar spark returning to her eyes. And as they stood under the stars, hand in hand, they understood that sometimes being late isn't a flaw, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to grow, to change, and ultimately to find the path meant just for them. The conference room was filled with the hum of excitement, the chatter of people eager to hear the big announcement. Jake sat at the long table, his heart racing as he glanced around at the faces staring back at him. Today wasn't just any day, it was the moment he had worked tirelessly for. The deal for his startup had finally gone through, and he was about to step into the spotlight. But all he could think of was Sarah. It had been months since they last spoke. Until now, he had brushed aside feelings of disappointment and insecurity, focusing solely on his achievement. But as he listened to the buzz of the room, memories of late-night discussions with Sarah flooded back, filling him with both pride and regret. They had always envisioned building something great together, but now she had moved on to a corporate world of her own, while he had just been barely catching up. The CEO's voice jolted him back to reality. Everyone's eyes were on him. He swallowed hard, nodded, and stood up, preparing to present the vision he had worked so hard to create. "Thank you, everyone. I'm excited to share that my startup has officially merged with our company." Applause filled the room, but as the clapping died down, Jake felt a pang of emptiness. He wanted to share this moment with Sarah. She would have celebrated with him, pushing him to aim even higher. Too late to grab the opportunities she had, too late to catch the ambitious spirit that had once fueled both their dreams. After the meeting, Jake stepped out of the crowded conference room, scanning the horizon of the bustling city outside. He pulled out his phone, hesitating as he rubbed his thumb against her contact. It had been too long since they connected. Maybe it was time to reach out. Maybe this was the moment he could set things right. With a deep breath, Jake hit send on a message. "Can we meet?" He doubted she would respond favorably, but he had to try. 2 hours later, a notification popped up and he felt a rush of excitement. As he paced his office, the anticipation mixed with anxiety. What would he say? Would she see how far he had come? Or would those walls that had grown between them still stand firm? The next day, they met at a cozy coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans wrapping around them like a familiar embrace. Jake watched her walk in, her confident stride making her presence known as she crossed the cafe. A part of him admired her success, but another part felt the familiar pang of jealousy. She said, a warm smile breaking across her face. It felt like no time had passed, and yet everything had changed. "Hey," he replied. They ordered their drinks, and for a moment the conversation flowed easily, navigating through the usual small talk about work and mutual friends. But beneath the surface, Jake felt the weight of the unspoken words pressing down. Sarah asked, leaning in with genuine curiosity. Jake decided it was time to pull the trigger. "Actually, I'm the new director of operations." Her eyes widened, but behind the glimmer of surprise was a flicker of something else doubt. "Wow, that's incredible, Jake, but I remember when you were still figuring things out." He leaned forward, drawing courage from the moment. "I've been working hard, really hard. After our last talk, I realized I needed to step up my game." She tilted her head, the intrigue in her expression building. "I'm proud of you, really." "Sure, but it's also about proving to myself that I can do this," he replied, his heart pounding. The light in Sarah's eyes dimmed for a second. "I never wanted to be the friend who wasn't on the same level. I've seen how ambitious you are." He paused, hoping vulnerability would resonate. She looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her cup. "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone, Jake. Growth takes time." "I get that," he said quickly, leaning on the table. "But I want to share that passion with you." For a moment, silence enveloped them, filled only by the ambient sounds of the cafe. Jake could sense the tension rising. Would she finally see the man he had become? "Jake, I need to think about this," she stammered, pulling back. "Right, I understand," he replied, trying to mask the hurt. Their conversation shifted once again, but the air felt different, overcast with unspoken complications. They moved through topics, yet all Jake could focus on was how to break down the walls that had formed since their last meetup. As they wrapped up, Sarah hesitated, hovering over the possibility of opening up. I don't want to revisit the past. Complicated or not, I want to embrace it," Jake implored. "We have shared dreams that didn't vanish." Her expression shifted, the vulnerability breaking through the careful facade. "Okay, but I can't wait on you forever. I'm ready now, let me show you," Jake insisted, sensing his chance. Days turned to weeks, and amidst his busy calendar, Jake made an effort to keep the connection alive. He reached out regularly, sharing ideas, questioning her insights, finally strengthening a bridge that had long been shaky. but he still sensed hesitation in her replies, an invisible barrier he couldn't quite break through. And then came the bombshell. His heartbeat quickened as he read the ominous news. They were downsizing and Sarah's name was on the list of layoffs. Heart pounding, Jake texted her immediately. "I just saw the news." "Yeah, I'm fine, just the corporate world being corporate," she replied, the brevity telling him everything he needed to know. "No, really, let's talk," he messaged back, concern flooding his mind. Later that evening they met again, and when Sarah walked in, he immediately saw the cracks in her confident facade. She looked worn down, her energy dimmed. "Jake, she began, but her voice faltered. "Don't say you're fine, you're clearly not," he urged, meeting her gaze. "This is a setback. I know, it's just painful," Sarah said, allowing herself to be vulnerable, finally shedding the armor she had put up. Her voice trailed off. "It's okay to feel lost sometimes," Jake replied, empathy washing over him. "We all go through tough phases." For a moment he could see that familiar spark reigniting. "I've always believed in you, Sarah, just like you believed in me." Their conversation deepened, speaking about past memories and dreams that once seemed out of reach. It was during this exchange that Jake felt inspiration surge through him again. "Let's build something together," he proposed, excitement bubbling forth. "You could join my team." She stared at him, surprise coloring her features. "Absolutely," he asserted. "You have experience and vision. I could use your skills, and you need a fresh start." Sarah's silence hung in the air as she mulled over the idea. "Then we pivot and we keep trying. We support each other through whatever comes." He could feel the tension dissipate, hairline fractures forming into possibilities. She asked softly. "I believe in us," he admitted, vulnerability exposing his raw emotions. And with that, the ice began to melt between them. Sarah finally smiled, the corners of her lips turning up with hope. They spent hours crafting a plan, carefully framing not just a vision for their company, but a renewed partnership. The energy flowed freely, reigniting dreams that had once felt lost. They took turns presenting ideas, encouraging each other, and laughing at the hurdles they could overcome together. As the weeks progressed, they launched their new startup, filled with enthusiasm and determination. What was once a playful dream transformed into coherent goals they worked tirelessly to achieve. The late nights merged into moments of shared laughter, and slowly Jake could see Sarah blooming in her newfound role. She tackled each challenge with the brilliance he had always admired, and he felt renewed by her presence. Yet amid the highs of success, he couldn't ignore the whispered doubts fighting for space in his mind. Would they truly succeed, or were they merely chasing shadows of hopes that slipped further away with each passing week? Their company grew steadily, but urgency loomed on the horizon. Competitors began to take notice, and the business landscape shifted beneath them. Jake found himself staring at declining numbers weeks into their venture, fear creeping back in. One evening, Jake sat at their office, the glow of his laptop highlighting the furrow on his brow. Sarah entered quietly, concern etched on her face. "I'm worried," he admitted, swallowing the fears creeping into his throat. "Our projections for next quarter are not what we hoped." "Jake, we knew starting a company would involve some risks. This isn't just about revenue." Sarah responded, her confidence seeping into the air. "I know, but what if he started?" But she cut him off. "How about we focus on improving? Let's brainstorm strategies and tackle this head-on," Sarah suggested, excitement twinkling in her eyes. As they remained engaged late into the night, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped them. The tension drew Jake in, igniting the spark of motivation they had both shared at the beginning. Days turned into months, yet doubts remained. The landscape was unforgiving, and survival instincts kicked in. One evening, when defeat loomed heavy, they looked out over the flickering lights of the city, casting shadows on their dreams. "We need to shift our strategy," Sarah proposed, an unwavering determination sharpening her gaze. "Let's innovate." Jake nodded, fully aware of the magnitude of their situation. "We can't let fear win." In that late-night brainstorming session, an idea began to unfold. They pivoted their strategy and focused on a unique product that hadn't yet penetrated the market. The energy around them shifted, igniting a spark of excitement. By the time they launched their new product, the atmosphere was electric. Their initial hype transformed into tangible possibilities as numbers shot up, leading to interest from investors. Finally, the revival came, the excitement they had both dreamed of. They watched their venture gain momentum, propelling them further into an industry they had both once felt disconnected from. Amid the celebration, Jake turned to Sarah, smiling widely. "We did it," he said, admiration glowing in his eyes. "Together," she confirmed, her gaze steady. "This partnership is everything." As they stood together, basking not just in success but shared resilience, Jake felt grateful. Maybe being too late was simply a part of their journey, leading them here hand in hand, ready to conquer whatever lay ahead. What began as a separation had transformed into a profound reunion, a testament to pushing through every obstacle, reminding them that sometimes timing is everything, and together they could shift the tides in their favor. In that moment, Jake realized the power of believing in each other, of reclaiming their ambitions and forging a new future. Sometimes being late meant standing at the door just as the real adventure began, and with Sarah by his side, he felt ready to step into the unknown once again. On the concrete rooftop of a high-rise building in downtown Austin, Jake stood frozen, staring at the bustling streets below. It was an ordinary Tuesday, but everything felt monumental. The sun was setting, casting long shadows and lighting up his face, but all he could feel was the cold weight of regret. It should have been a moment of celebration. He had worked tirelessly, pouring his heart and soul into the startup, and now it was finally happening, but instead it felt hollow. "Too late," Sarah had said on the phone, her voice echoing in his mind like a haunting refrain. "You're too late, Jake." Those words sliced through him, bringing back memories of long nights spent discussing dreams and ambitions, the spark they had shared, and the lives they had both envisioned. Once they were two ambitious souls who thought nothing could keep them apart, but as they ventured into their careers, it felt like they had drifted 1,000 miles away, invisible currents pulling them in different directions. He dialed her number, his heart racing as it rang. Each beep sounded like a countdown. "Come on, pick up," he muttered under his breath. The call went to voicemail and he clenched his fists in frustration. "I really wish you could see me now," he whispered to the wind. That night he lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the thrill of success dulled by doubt. What did it all mean if Sarah wasn't a part of it? He recalled the last few conversations they had. She had climbed the corporate ladder at a rapid pace while he struggled to find his footing. They had talked about starting a company together, but that had been years ago. Now, as he prepared to merge with a major tech firm, he couldn't help but feel like he'd let the best part of his life slip away. Weeks went by and Jake settled into his new role. Every meeting was filled with excited chatter and ambitious plans, yet despite the buzz in the office, he still felt incomplete. He found himself missing Sarah even more. They had once shared coffee and dreams late into the night, but now the silence between them felt heavy. He had let the moment slip, the moment where he could have shown her how far he had come, how ambitious he had become. Determined to bridge the gap, he reached out again. "Sarah," he typed into his phone, "I want you to see what I've built." He hit send, the pang of hope lifting his spirits for the first time in weeks. To his surprise, she replied quickly. The next day, anticipation buzzed in his chest as he waited at their favorite café, a cozy little place tucked away from the bustling streets. Jake arrived early, his heart racing at the thought of seeing her again. He glanced around, the warm scent of coffee and pastries filling the air, blending with the anxiety brewing inside him. When Sarah walked in, time seemed to stand still. She looked radiant, her confidence brightening the room. But there was also something different about her, a kind of guardedness, as if she was protecting herself from the past. "Hey," he greeted as she approached, a smile breaking across his face. "Hi," she replied, her eyes scanning his face as if searching for something. They ordered their coffees, and as they sat down, Jake felt a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. The initial pleasantries flew by, but he could feel the tension lurking beneath the surface. "Let's talk about what you've been up to," Sarah said, leaning forward, her curiosity finally breaking through. "Okay, here it goes," Jake said, determination lacing his tone. "I merged my startup with a major tech company." Her eyebrows rose, surprise flickering across her face. "That's impressive, Jake," he echoed, the word packing a punch. "I had to be ready, you taught me that, but I still feel off." "Jake, you can't measure success by who achieves it first," she said, her voice softening. "I thought we could be on the same path," he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "I don't know if that's possible anymore," Sarah replied, her gaze dropping. He asked, the hurt rising. "Sometimes it feels like the timing just isn't right," she admitted, looking vulnerable. "Our lives have taken different paths." Jake swallowed hard at her words. "I'm not asking you to slow down, I want to run alongside you." There was a heartbeat of silence, and he felt the air between them grow thick. He continued, "I could use your business acumen while I handle the technical stuff." "Jake, I appreciate the offer," she said, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "But I can't go back to how things used to be. I need to focus on my own goals now." He prodded, emotions swirling in his chest. "I just need time," she replied, her eyes softening. "This isn't just about business for me." Jake's heart dropped. Their conversation felt like a jigsaw puzzle with pieces missing. The hope he had kindled was starting to flicker out. As they parted that day, Jake felt a sense of urgency wash over him. If he wanted to bridge the gap with Sarah, he couldn't wait much longer. It became an obsession. He immersed himself deeper into his work, putting in long hours each day, seeking validation in every success, hoping it would get Sarah to notice him again. Weeks turned into months, and despite his efforts, he still felt lost. The spark he once had began dimming, overshadowed by the constant noise of corporate life. Jake spent nights tossing and turning, fixating on thoughts of the past and what could have been. The silence between them felt heavier with every passing day. Then came the unexpected news. A tech rival had caught wind of his company, and their offers to acquire it came pouring in. Jake found himself standing before the board in a pivotal meeting where they would decide the direction of the company's future. His heart raced as he sat among the suits. The pressure mounted, but he felt a strange resolve. It was time to take a leap. "We could take their offer," one executive said, leaning forward eagerly. "But what happens to our vision? We won't be creators, we'll just be another cog in their machine," Jake countered passionately, adrenaline coursing through him. Instead, let's focus on our original plan. Long moments stretched as he scanned the room, waiting for someone to support him. His mind drifted off to Sarah again, how she believed in him when he could barely see his own potential. After a long pause, one of the board members spoke up. "You make a compelling case, Jake." The tension broke slightly and murmurs of agreement filled the room. This was a turning point, a chance to bring the company back to its roots, to focus on innovation rather than the quick side of the corporate game. As the meeting adjourned, Jake rushed to his desk and instinctively he grabbed his phone. He had to tell Sarah. "Hey, I have news. We're standing our ground and focusing on our vision," he texted her, heart thumping in his chest. "Sounds like a bold move." "I'd love to hear about it over coffee again," Sarah replied, the excitement tinged with an underlying uncertainty. Jake fired back, breathless with anticipation. When they met, the air felt alive with the familiar energy they had once shared. Over lattes, they exchanged ideas again about business, dreams, and future aspirations. As he spoke about the company's direction, an idea struck him. "Let's collaborate on something," he said, leaning in. "Let's build a team that integrates our strengths. We could host webinars or create courses." "Jake, you're really passionate about this," she remarked, admiration creeping into her tone. Then we pivot again, but I believe we can make this work. The flicker of hope reignited within her eyes as she considered the proposition. "This could be fun. Maybe I could add some structure to your chaos," she teased, a bright smile spilling across her lips. Days progressed and their collaboration blossomed. They hosted webinars discussing topics that bridged their expertise. The excitement was palpable. They saw interest building in their audience, and each session felt electric, as if they were rediscovering the connection that had once drawn them together. But just when things seemed to fall into place, Jake sensed the anxiety creeping back. What if she reconsidered? Would she place her corporate ambitions before their blossoming partnership? One evening, as they wrapped up a particularly thriving session, Jake turned to her. "This has been amazing, but I need to know, Sarah, are we on the same level again?" She studied him for a moment, weighing her words carefully. "Jake, I'm enjoying this more than I thought I would, but I can't promise anything. My job is still my priority." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Sometimes life demands we take risks. I'm not shying away, I'm just unsure," she admitted, sincerity etched in her features. The conversation hung heavy in the air and Jake's heart sank. He wanted to put it all on the line to build something beautiful with Sarah again, but he also feared pushing her away. As they parted ways that day, uncertainty hung like a storm cloud, but Jake steeled himself. They had come too far to turn back now. Days turned into weeks, and as winter began to thaw into spring, Jake faced the crossroads he had dreaded. His company's growth began to plateau. Numbers dulled and their sparks started to flicker again. Desperate for answers, he reached out to Sarah. "I think we need to rethink our strategy. Our last few sessions haven't netted the outreach we expected," he texted her, anxiety creeping back in. "We'll brainstorm together. Let's meet later this week," she replied, and he felt a flicker of relief. In their next meeting, Jake pulled up analytics on the screen and outlined potential strategies with palpable urgency. "We can build momentum if we tap into social media influence," he suggested, animatedly pointing to charts. "I'm with you on that, but we need to address our audience differently," Sarah chimed in, her confidence igniting the room. The fire had returned as they collaborated fiercely. Yet even as they powered through ideas, Jake still felt the tightrope they were walking. His heart danced between urging her to commit more and allowing her the space she needed. After hours of back and forth, Sarah finally leaned back in her chair, looking contemplative. "I think we're on the brink of something great, but only if we both prioritize this." "Absolutely," he said, the passion surging through him. Over the weeks that followed, they rolled out a new campaign designed around personal stories, community engagement, and genuine connection. They showcased their knowledge while reaching out to audiences in an unprecedented way. Jake felt invigorated, driven by both purpose and passion, and success began to follow. Their engagement metrics climbed, reaching heights that once felt impossible. With it, an undeniable chemistry blossomed between them, one that felt electric, as if they were finally aligned in mind and heart. One evening, as they celebrated a successful campaign launch, Sarah turned to Jake, her eyes sparkling. "I didn't expect this to work so well," she laughed, her joy illuminating the room. "Neither did I, but I'm grateful we took the chance," he replied, his heartbeat quickening. It was time to broach the subject that lingered beneath the surface. She asked, curiosity glimmering in her eyes. "Now that we're seeing the fruits of our labor, I want you to know I believe in you, both as a partner in this business and as something more," he confessed, vulnerability lacing his words. Her smile faltered for a moment, uncertainty flooding back in. "Jake, I don't know if I'm ready for more," he felt his heart drop. "I get that, but the connection we have, it isn't just business." "Maybe, but I'm cautious. I can't afford to mix personal with professional," she whispered, an air of hesitation curling around her. "Neither can I," he said softly, his heart aching. The pulse of tension hung between them. Eventually, she reached out, touching his arm lightly. And so they agreed to continue fostering their partnership, allowing the chemistry to develop slowly while remaining committed to their shared vision. In the following months, their company flourished, becoming a lighthouse in an industry overshadowed by giants. As they celebrated successes together, Jake couldn't help but reflect on how far they had both come, not just in business but in life, reshaping their connection piece by piece. Then came the day Jake stood in front of his team, excitement sparkling in the air as they prepared for a big announcement, a new project that could propel their company even further ahead. "I'm thrilled to announce our new collaboration will expand us into international markets," Jake declared, looking around at the faces that had become his second family. Amid the cheers and applause, he glanced over at Sarah, who stood beaming with pride. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a victory for them as individuals or as business partners. It was a testament to how far they had come together. Later that night, as they met on the rooftop terrace, bathed in the glow of city lights, Jake turned to Sarah with a racing heart. "Thank you for standing by my side through every doubt. I didn't realize how much I needed this again, Jake," she confessed, her voice catching in her throat. "That brings me to something I need to say," he replied, hope rising through the uncertainty. For the first time, her guard cracked and the vulnerability in her eyes melted away barriers. "I know you are, and I'm starting to believe in us." "That's okay," he replied, reaching for her hand. They stood together, two souls intertwined, bathed in the brilliance of the future they were attempting to forge. And slowly, as they embraced both the personal and professional, they found solace in knowing that sometimes, taking the leap meant rediscovering the love and ambition that had always existed between them. In a world driven by timelines and benchmarks, they learned the power of patience, how timing might bend, and paths could diverge, but that didn't mean they were any less meant for one another. Today, they stood side by side, ready to face the world, because together they were finally home. The morning sun filtered through the windows, creating a warm glow in the office as Jake stood by his desk, looking out at the city below. This was the moment he had worked for. A week of uncertainty was finally coming to an end. Days turned into nights, consumed by endless hustle and sleepless hours, and his heart raced with anticipation. Today, he would sign the papers to finalize his company's acquisition by a multi-million-dollar tech firm. The room buzzed with excitement, but as he prepared for the meeting, a familiar voice echoed in his mind. Sarah's words drifted back to him like a haunting melody. Months ago, she had told him he needed to step up to become the leader he had always promised to be. But her tone had been laced with disappointment, and that pivotal moment lingered like a shadow. As he stared out the window, the weight of her expectations pressed heavily on his chest. The meeting room filled quickly with executives and investors, icy in its professionalism. Jake sat at the head of the table, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations. As the documents were laid out in front of him, he glanced at his phone. No messages from Sarah. With one deep breath, Jake signed the contract, sealing the fate of his startup, the culmination of years of stress, sleepless nights, and sacrifice. The applause from the room felt distant, fading into a cacophony of doubt. Did Sarah even care? Was he truly ready for this next step? That evening, after the celebrations had ended, Jake found himself scrolling through old messages, images of them laughing, dreaming, and planning a future together, moments when life felt endless and full of possibilities. He remembered the day they both sat outside, chatting under the stars, sharing dreams like secrets. They had talked about launching a company together, but time had intervened. Life had pulled them in different directions. Frustrated, he picked up his phone, staring at her contact. What would he even say? He snorted at the thought. Would she think it impressive or simply pity him for needing her validation? Several days passed, and still he couldn't shake Sarah from his mind. His office was filled with optimism and ambition, yet all he could think about was how she had stood by his side through countless trials in the past. Finally, on a whim, he messaged her. "Can we meet?" His finger trembled on the send button. After a few painfully long minutes, her response came back almost instantly. "Sure." Jake's heart raced as he prepared for the meeting. He picked a cozy cafe in the heart of the city, a place where they used to spend countless hours together, dreaming about their future. As he arrived early, the smell of brewed coffee enveloped him, filling him with warmth. Would this be the moment where they could reconnect? When Sarah walked in, a wave of nostalgia crashed over him. She was just as he remembered, smart, driven, and undeniably beautiful. Her hair flowed past her shoulders, and her presence lit up the room. They exchanged pleasantries, but Jake noticed a subtle tension in the air. Over coffee, small talk filled the gaps as they navigated the murky waters of their relationship. Jake listened intently as she spoke about her recent projects and promotions. It was hard not to feel a pang of jealousy, but he pushed it aside. They were both chasing their own paths, and it was refreshing to hear her speak with such confidence. But then came the moment that shifted everything. She asked, genuine curiosity in her eyes. "It's great, actually. I just finalized the acquisition of my startup. It's a big leap forward," Jake said, gauging her reaction. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise, but it only took a moment for her expression to change. "Wow, that's impressive," she replied, her enthusiasm almost wavering. "But I mean," his heart sank. "I know I wasn't, but I realized I had to step up." Sarah leaned back in her chair, arms crossing defensively. "I'm glad you finally found your footing, Jake," he echoed, hurt crawling into his tone. "It It just feels like we're on different paths now, she said, her voice cool yet tinged with sadness. The air between them felt heavy, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Jake blurted out, a glimmer of desperation weaving into his speech. We had dreams, Sarah. Her gaze softened. I just don't know if we could do that. Jake felt a knot in his stomach. You think this is too late for us then? Maybe it is, she responded quietly, and the finality of her words felt like frozen steel. I've moved on. The silence grew weighty. Though they ended the meeting pleasantly enough, Jake felt a sense of finality looming over him. He had been so focused on proving himself that he hadn't realized how far apart they'd grown. Days turned into weeks, and as he threw himself deeper into his work, he felt an emptiness gnawing at him. Staying busy was no replacement for the connection he once shared with Sarah. One evening, as he worked late in the office, a notification pinged on his phone, startling him out of a fog. It was from Sarah, a simple invitation to a launch party at her new company. His heart raced as he read the message. Could this be his chance to show her how far he'd come? He decided to attend, needing to prove himself not just to her, but to himself. That night he stood outside the upscale venue, nerves zipping through him. The building loomed, glowing with excitement, and as he walked in, he saw Sarah mingling with colleagues, laughter spilling from her lips. Her confidence radiated, and he felt a mixture of admiration and jealousy twist in his stomach. As he approached her, she caught his eye, and her smile brightened. Jake, she exclaimed, and for a moment he felt a jolt of hope. Wouldn't miss it for the world, he said, trying to match her enthusiasm. They stepped away from the crowd, their voices stretching out amid the loud laughter surrounding them. I'm really happy for you, Sarah. Jake paused, gathering his own emotions. Thanks, Jake. It's been a journey, she replied, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. But it's not easy. I get that, he said, leaning in closer. But what if we set our own expectations? Her laughter felt tense, more out of surprise than genuine joy. I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe it, he replied, his heart pounding. Sarah looked away for a long moment. I know, but let's break it down, he encouraged, sensing that flicker of interest igniting inside her. We both want to make an impact. Finally, she looked back at him, hesitation easing slightly in her gaze. They parted that night, and Jake felt a sense of possibility stirring deep within him. Maybe it wasn't too late after all, but doubt still churned in his stomach. Days passed, and he continued to work hard while keeping his hope alive. Each time he reached out to Sarah, he felt the connection growing again, slowly stitching together the rift that had formed in their lives. One afternoon, as he was going through emails, a news alert flashed on his screen, halting his breath. The article highlighted Sarah's new company and their latest success, but mixed in the headlines was a darker thread: layoffs were imminent. Concern swept over him like a tidal wave. He picked up his phone, fingers trembling, and sent her a quick message. Hey, I saw the news. After a few agonizing minutes, her response came. I'm fine. Let's talk, please. I want to help if I can, he urged. When they met later that week, Jake could see the weariness in Sarah's face. She was stretched thin, juggling responsibilities that felt unbearably heavy. I didn't expect this to hit so hard, she admitted as they settled into a corner of the cafe. I get it, but you're not alone in this, he said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. Tears welled up in her eyes. Even if I wanted that, I believe we can build something powerful, he replied, squeezing her hand. As they spoke, Jake could feel pieces of the past wash over them again. The unspoken bond stirred, pulling them closer toward a reality they had once envisioned. Gradually, Sarah's resolve began to soften as they talked more about the future. Let's put our heads together, she suggested with newfound determination. Jake leaned in, his voice brimming with excitement. Let's combine our resources and create something we both believe in. Through late-night brainstorming sessions filled with passion and laughter, they rediscovered that magic that initially brought them together. Piece by piece, their aspirations merged into a comprehensive strategy, an idea that embraced who they both were and what they could achieve as partners. Months later, in a moment of triumph, they gathered their team to celebrate their successful launch. Surrounded by colleagues and friends, Jake felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He never would have thought that Sarah would become the collaborator he had always yearned for. Later that evening, he found Sarah on the terrace overlooking the city, her silhouette framed against the stars. We did it, he breathed, astonished by the journey they had embraced together. Her smile lit up the night. Do you think we can keep this going? Jake asked, his voice low but filled with hope. Yeah, we're both in this now, she replied, the warmth in her voice washing over him. In that moment, standing together, Jake realized that sometimes being late means finding the right moment at the right time. Their timing may have been off, but the journey had been worth every twist and turn. As they embraced the future, Jake finally understood that it was never about catching up. It was about discovering where they belonged, together. A partnership forged in dreams and confirmed through resilience, ready to take on whatever the world had in store. The penthouse conference room glimmered with excitement as Jake stared out at the sprawling city below. It was his moment of triumph. He had finally secured the acquisition of his startup by one of the leading tech companies. But just as the clock ticked down to the big announcement, a familiar voice echoed in his head. The words belonged to Sarah, the woman who had once been his closest collaborator and friend, now somewhere well ahead in her own career. Her voice haunted him, a bitter reminder of the times when they dreamed big together in the glow of streetlights during their late-night talks. They had always understood one another, shared ambitions sparking between them like electricity, until life pulled them apart, leaving him chasing shadows. Holding the signed contract, he felt a wave of uncertainty. Today should have felt like a win, yet he couldn't shake off the feeling of loss. He glanced at his phone, hoping for a message from Sarah, though he knew deep down it was too much to expect. Months had passed since he reached out, and months since Sarah had acknowledged his existence in any meaningful way. As he stepped into the meeting room, the buzz of conversation faded into the background. Investors smiled, nodding in approval. Celebrations had been planned, grand gestures of success awaited, but inside, Jake felt a storm brewing. The conference table was strewn with documents and glossy project proposals, yet all he could think about was Sarah. Of the moments they shared, the plans they made. And here I am, he whispered to himself, a CEO and still somehow. Just as the presentation was about to begin, a notification flashed across his phone. It was a message from Sarah. Congratulations on the acquisition. His heart raced. This was his chance. Without thinking, he typed back, thanks, it feels surreal. Can we catch up? There was a moment of silence that felt eternal, then her reply came. I'm busy. That was it. Next time. Jake felt a knot tighten in his chest. Was it too late for them? Was their friendship lost in the corporate gears of ambition? The presentation unfolded, and Jake put on a confident facade, guiding his audience through metrics and future projections. He spoke with passion, but his mind drifted. What was the point of this success if he couldn't share it with Sarah? At the end of the presentation, he received applause, but it felt hollow. The next few weeks zoomed past in a blur of meetings and strategy sessions. He poured himself into his new responsibilities, yet every success was quickly overshadowed by thoughts of Sarah. The clock struck midnight one night while he was working late, and he found himself scrolling through old photos on his phone. Images of them laughing, brainstorming, and dreaming filled the screen. They owed it to each other to find their way back. But how disheartened, he picked up the phone once more, hesitating before typing, "Can we please reconnect?" To his surprise, she replied almost immediately. Jake's heart leaped. Perfect. The morning of their meeting, Jake felt a mix of excitement and dread. He arrived early, seated at a small table in the corner, his chest tight with anticipation. Each minute felt like an hour as he fidgeted with the coffee cup, replaying past conversations in his mind. Would Sarah see him as someone worth investing in? When she walked through the door, time seemed to stand still. She looked stunning, confidence radiating off her in waves, but as she approached, Jake noticed something behind her smile, an apprehension that struck him like lightning. She greeted him with warmth that sent jolts of nostalgia coursing through him. "Hey, Sarah." "It's great to see you," he managed, his throat tightening. They ordered their coffee, and the tension slowly began to dissipate as they chatted about their lives, but Jake could see the walls still standing between them, a thin yet impenetrable barrier. After a few minutes of small talk, he took a deep breath, deciding to dive in. "So things have been crazy at my company." "That's amazing," she replied, but Jake felt her cautiousness underneath her praise. "But I'd like to expand our vision even more. You know us, a team passionate about making a difference," he said, unable to keep the hope from creeping into his voice. "You and I have always had that spark together." Sarah looked down at her coffee, examining it like it held the answers to unasked questions. "Jake, we've both moved on. I believe we can," he insisted, leaning in. "Even if we've followed separate paths, I still think what we had is worth exploring again." Her gaze met his, the air thick with unresolved feelings. "It's not that simple," she said delicately. "I'm focused on my career." "Then we pivot again, but let's at least try. The idea of not reaching for more feels wrong," he urged, feeling a mix of determination and vulnerability. Their conversation hung in the air as Sarah hesitated. "I need time to think about it, Jake." As they parted ways, Jake felt a swell of hope mixed with anxiety. Maybe he could win her back, not just as a colleague, but as a partner. Over the following weeks, he tried to stay focused on work, but each time he caught sight of a photo of them together, it sliced through him like glass. Then he became immersed in a major project. Days turned into weeks, and he found himself pouring every ounce of energy into the company's growth. One day, he stumbled upon an unexpected opportunity. A rival company was facing a scandal, and Jake saw it as a chance to take their market share. He brought it to the board. "This is our moment. We can acquire their assets and leverage this weakness," he presented passionately. Murmurs of agreement filled the air, and for the first time in months, Jake felt a surge of confidence. Yet deep down, he still longed for Sarah's partnership. Just as the board decided to move forward with the acquisition, Jake reserved an evening to surprise Sarah, hoping to rekindle that spark. He found a new spot, a rooftop bar overlooking the city. As he waited, anticipation and nerves intertwined, his gaze wandered to the skyline, a dazzling spectacle of lights below. When Sarah arrived, surprise lit her face. "I thought you'd appreciate it," he replied with a smile. They talked about the city, the changes, and how far they'd both come. But as the conversation shifted back to work and the upcoming acquisition, Jake felt a tight knot of vulnerability forming in his chest. She asked, frowning slightly, "Trust me, I've prepared for this, but I want you to be a part of it," he said, watching for any signs of excitement. She gazed into his eyes, searching for answers. "That's the thing, I thought it was only about the business, but now I realize it's about us," he confessed. The tension between them hung thick as silence fell. "Jake, I need more time to figure out what I want," she replied, frustration now competing with vulnerability. "What do you need? I'd do whatever it takes because it's worth it," he urged. Sarah paused, taking a deep breath. "I don't want to be part of something and then have it fall apart. This isn't just about business for me." Jake's heart raced as a mix of excitement and fear coursed through him. What if he could convince her to join him on this path together, and they could change everything? Weeks passed with Jake chasing the glow of a potential future with Sarah. He brought her coffee sometimes, exchanged messages to share successes, and every time he felt like they bridged the gap a little more. But just as clarity blossomed, life threw a curveball. The rival company had a potential buyer, and Jake found himself in a desperate race against time. "We need to act now," he told his board members, urgency spilling from every word. That night, adrenaline coursed through him as he called Sarah, hoping she'd be on his side. "I think they might get bought out before we can make a move," he stated, keeping his tone serious. She asked cautiously, and he swallowed hard at the uncertainty in her voice. "We need to make a decision. If we don't move soon, we'll lose everything," he said, a knot tightening in his stomach. She replied, tension filling the air. "Trust me, I know we've both been hesitant, but look where we are now. We can't sit idly by. We have a shot at rewriting our futures together," he insisted. "Okay, let's confirm this tomorrow," she agreed. The next day, Jake sat on edge as they entered the boardroom together. He could sense the potential of their combined strengths, their partnership glowing like a beacon. As they laid out their plans, Jake felt hope surging inside. Everything had led to this moment where their paths converged. But when they finally reached the moment of truth, a rival company burst through the door. In a shocking twist, it wasn't just a regular pitch. The rival firm had come to outbid them directly for the vulnerable target. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but it seems the deal is off the table," their CEO announced as Jake's heart dropped. The air went still. The shock rippled through the room as Jake looked over at Sarah, only to find her expression clouded with disbelief. In that instant, the gravity of the betrayal hit them both. Everything they had aimed for felt suddenly out of reach. Jake could see the urgency on Sarah's face as she stepped forward, heart racing. "We need to go back to the drawing board," she murmured, energy reigniting within her. Suddenly, in the swirl of shattered plans and ambitions, Jake was left with a choice. Would he fight to rebuild, knowing that time was no longer in their favor? Could he reclaim what they had lost, or would this betrayal spell the end of everything they had hoped for? As the tension rose, he felt fireworks of ambition ignite within him, ready to rise to the challenge. This was not just a business battle anymore, it was personal. And what would he sacrifice to win back everything they had wanted together? With resolve glimmering in his eyes, Jake locked gazes with Sarah, ready to take on the world together, no matter the risks that still loomed ahead. This was just the beginning. They were not done yet. As the closing door echoed behind them, he knew they had only scratched the surface of what they were capable of. And with that, they both stood on the precipice of a journey that could redefine everything, as life's unpredictability swirled around them, setting the stage for an epic showdown. Each choice they made would lead them deeper into the heart of ambition and connection, and neither of them was ready to turn back now.